Okay, cool. We're live again, and we got Laz back already. Amy, I think, went to the bathroom or to have a smoke break, and we're going to start this up in just another second. Laz and everybody listening, I'm very, very sorry. I'm a dumbass. Blame that on me. I should have just hit the X button and crossed out the window, but I accidentally hit stop broadcast. So my bad, everybody, and I'm so sorry. So we're going to just try to pick this up where we left off. But luckily, since I've got a new broadcast going, I already ran a test and my screen share is working. So hooray for that. Now I can do my presentation. So, okay, we got a few people in here already. Mad Pie Man and Io and Blue Blood and Reality is here with us. Laz is able to get back in here. Laz, I appreciate you, brother. You're doing great, and I really appreciate your interpretation. It gives me a whole new way to look at things. I can't say enough how much I appreciate it.
Man, thank you. That means a lot to me. But I just wanted to. I know that you're probably gonna go back and listening to it again, and But I'm not saying that I'm giving the right interpretation. I'm just trying to make a point that it could be, it could be interpreted not necessarily literally.
No, I totally get it. And look, like I said, I'm actually a fan of Bill Donahue, and the way you were explaining your interpretation reminded me very much of Bill Donahue, and I like the way the guy interprets things, and I do understand that as above, so below. That motif permeates our reality in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even. I mean, I could probably just spend 3 hours just listing all the different ways that as above, so below affects and manifests itself in our reality.
The other one that I like very much is when they say, "Man, know thyself and know the mysteries of the universe."
Yeah.
That one too.
See, it was Santos Bonacci that was talking about the 12 cell salts of the body. I didn't even know that. Until I heard that from him. And I
Well,
looked.
Santos, Jordan Maxwell,
Manly P. Hall.
Miley P. Hole, Bill Donahue. These people are not coming up. We're not coming up with this shit. They are getting all this information from the same place everybody's getting it. The ancient people, Giordano Bruno, all these ancient giants of intellectual and spiritual giants.
Yeah.
Now we are rediscovering, but I think this is a good subject. Remind me, this is a good subject when we get into astrotheology.
I was recently listening to Michael Tazarian, and one of the things that he said that I wasn't aware of that makes perfect sense is that the Sphinx in Egypt is it's the woman, the head of a woman, which is the Virgin or the
Isis.
Isis. It's the Great Mother. It's the
it's the woman with the bell that I was talking about.
And it's the tail of a lion. It's Virgo, the Virgin.
Yes.
And it's Leo. These are constellations because in the Kemet philosophy of ancient Egypt, they didn't see. This is where Santos Bonacci gets it wrong. Santos says that Aries is the first of the astrological constellations.
Yeah, you got it wrong there.
Everything starts in Aries, according to Santos. This is where he gets it wrong.
Yeah,
the ancient Kemet religion, they start in Virgo and it ends in Leo.
Leo, yes, it's a process,
and that's why the Sphinx itself is an embodiment of the entire zodiac by having the head of the woman, which is the beginning, and the tail of the lion, which is the end of the entire zodiac. And it's all encompassed into one statue. It's a beautiful way that they.
But see, you got to interpret the statue in the right way. Many people will just look at it and say, "Oh, that's a statue of the lion. Don't mean shit."
Right? Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, and many people have said that the head has been recarved, which it has been. This is a fact.
Yes, it's smaller. It doesn't fit the the
It's not
dimensions of the body. Yeah.
And so
exactly.
it was thought that it used to be a dog, the Anubis, that the head used to be the Anubis dog.
One
And
thing that they forget to destroy about the things is the nose. They didn't forget about destroying that. They broke the nose.
do you think they broke it, or do you think it broke naturally? Because
No,
shit
no,
happened.
it was broken by the French
Napoleon.
Napoleon with the French because it was black. It was a
Yeah,
Negro feature.
yeah. That's what I hear. I've heard that story too.
Oh yeah, because I mean, and that's the thing that I don't like about Sarian. Sarian tried to connect Ireland with Egypt, where he failed to mention that Egypt was connected to everywhere, not just Ireland.
Yeah,
But he pretend to like the people in Ireland founded the Egypt society or Egypt community, but that's not the case because that would make those people white. But in that is not the case. It's everywhere you go, you see that every statue of the old period, the emperors of Egypt before the Greek went over there and tried to this barbaric individual Alexander, the not so great. He was a butcher. Once they go over there, then people want to talk about that side of history of the Egypt. But Africa, those pyramids were built most likely by the African people, then the Kemetic people, black people, and not just black people. Everybody that was there, because at that time racial discrimination was not even mentioned in any text in the back. Back then, that's a new
True.
thing. That's a new
True.
thing.
It's
That relation,
manufactured thing.
that religion, and Darwinism started the racial shit. Not started, but religion started it, and then Darwinism gave it the fuel of their scientific proof of white supremacists, and we can talk
Yep.
about that later.
well, racism is the Bible is littered with racism. The racism runs all the way through the Bible.
If you read it literally, yes.
If you read it literally, yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
That's the problem.
Starting with God's chosen people, that's racism. And then there's a story where Israelite was laying with a Philistine woman, and then somebody came in and was stabbed them and speared both of them and killed them, and it was against God's command not to mix with these other people. So racism is replete throughout the entire Bible.
If you read it literally, yes.
Well, I guess that's the main problem is people are reading it literally. I mean, we've got
That's what I'm trying to tell you. Remember, if you go back to what I said.
See, the problem with reading it literally is the problem that we're facing today, because the denominations of Christianity currently are 41,000 denominations of Christianity.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's because they're reading it literally, except when one denomination reads it literally, they may not like a particular passage. Like they may not agree to the literal translation of a particular story, where another group, another Christian sect will absolutely they'll think that that's a literal story, and then maybe they'll tweak a different story in a different way, and they just disagree on little minor points, and they argue with each other, and then they break off and start a whole new fucking church. And that's why we have 41,000 denominations of Christianity, because they can't even agree on their own shit.
Yeah. Well, maybe you want to make a note to yourself to find out a passage in the New Testament when he says that the so-called Jesus of the Bible never, ever spoke but in parables. So when you face a conversation with any fundamental literary that they read the fundamentalists that read the Bible literally, you can tell them, okay, so how can you read it literally if it says it was a parable?
Say that again, bro. You broke up. You broke up terrible. Say it again.
Okay, maybe you ought to take a note to yourself and find out in the Bible, in the New Testament, I don't remember the exact quote, but when it says in the Bible that the so-called Jesus never spoke but in parables. That is, he always spoke in parables.
Yes, he even says
So, yeah, so you
Yes.
can ask any fundamentalist that take the Bible literally, how can he take a parable literally?
that's a great point right there, brother.
That's it. That's the
Definitely.
conversation ends.
Yeah, that is an ender, right? That's a conversation stopper right there. Because I mean, literally, if you're gonna look me in the eye and say that Jesus is the truth, the way, the life, then here's the passage, and I'll find it where
Well,
Jesus.
Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life.
Well, he's the Son. So the Son is
No,
the truth,
no.
the way, and the life.
You are the Son.
Jesus is a solar deity,
Yes.
without a doubt.
Okay, we can go that into the astrotheology theme. Again, there are different languages. There is the materialistic, there is the astrology language, there is the astrotheology, there is a metaphysics, there is spiritually. That's what I've been telling you, that the Bible is a plagiarized from other people, that they were so sophisticated that they got to send a symbolism that you can read it, that can send 100,000 messages. In other words, these people were so high conscious and spiritual awakened that they can make a symbol or a statue and send a message to many people that would interpret it in many different ways. But they will end up with the same conclusion using different methodology way around it.
That's where I might disagree, because you said with the same conclusion. That's the problem. They don't have the same conclusion. If they did,
Well, you can reach the same conclusion.
well, it doesn't seem to be working very well. Otherwise,
No, it's not working, because we got
41,000
religion.
denominations.
We got religion. Yes, we don't use the science of the past. We don't use. See, Christianity used to be called the way, and then they changed it to Christianity because it was an offense or whatever. But Christianity and the way of Horus used to be called the way, because that's the path of the sun going around or going over. That's the way. So east to west. That's why the Masons have that. I'm going from east to west and back, because that's what the sun do. So, if you measure the statue of the Sphinx, the lion woman in Egypt, if you mathematically measure it, you will end up at the same conclusion, that these people in the past were really, really intelligent in the science. If you probably can wait and see how much it weighs, or you can figure how these people move those stones to put them there, how they carve it without supposedly no tool. So if you follow that methodology of investigation, and you can use science, common knowledge, you can use common sense, logic, intuition, the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain, then you understand. You pretty much get to the same conclusion if the individual is honest and not trying to find that he's right, but just like you use all the time, he tried to find objectively.
I totally agree. You're making way too much sense, Laz. All right. All right.
Indeed.
You guys ready to see some interesting shit? I got some stuff to show you.
Yes, very ready.
That was probably what Ezekiel told the Israelites. You want to see some shit?
Okay, let me put some of this stuff away. And tell you what, I'm gonna close that. I'm gonna shrink that down. Okay, so I'm going to have to open up another file, because I have to lay a little bit of groundwork first. So for those who are not familiar with the analemma, I have to lay this groundwork first. Most people think that Christ's birthday is December 25th. Now, this is a picture of an old world map. This is the Analema. This right here that you can, this figure 8 pattern. So right here, I don't know if my mouse is on target, but right here at the crux of the Analema, this is from August to September going down, and then right there, right and smack in the middle of April on its way up. This is the pattern. This is the path the sun makes in the sky. If you track the sun, say once a week, if you walk out on your porch and you take a picture of the sun from the same location at the same time of day, and you do it once a week, this is what you'll get. You'll get a pattern in the sky. This is what the sun does over the course of the solar cycle. This is called the Analema. Okay? And so the descending point, as it says here, the descending point is the cross point, which is August 29th on its way down. Now, when the sun goes down and around into winter, and then it comes back up in spring, and then it goes through summer, and then it goes right here at the cross point again on its way up. Does anybody know what day it is? Amy, stay quiet. I know you know this.
Of course, I know that.
So,
yeah, I'll stay quiet for you, hon.
So Laz, do you know what day that is on the way up? When the sun comes up and it crosses the figure 8 point again on its way up. Do you know what day that is right there?
December 25th.
No, sir. December 25th is
December 25th is on the other side. Yeah, I'm sorry.
December 25th is down here on the bottom.
I think you mentioned that in the comment some time ago. It was April?
No. It's September 11th.
Oh, okay. But September should be on the other side.
It's 9/11.
In the winter side.
December, August. I'll show you the other picture. It's in September.
Okay. No, I'm not arguing with you, man.
Okay.
Come on, man.
Okay. Well, just so the 88. We were trying to get influence freedom on here because the 88 pattern, the 88 symbology. This is the lunar cycle. The moon does the same thing. It makes a figure 8 pattern over the course of a 28-day lunar cycle. And you can take a picture of the moon every single day from the same location over the lunar cycle, and you'll get a figure 8 pattern in the sky. It's called,
I thought the moon was 29 and a half.
20. Is it 28 and a half or 29 and a half?
That's
don't
okay. It
know.
doesn't matter.
It's
It doesn't matter.
It's the lunar cycle.
I'm familiar with what you're saying, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Okay. So just real quick, this is an interesting picture just for shits and giggles. There's a couple of crop circles that show the Analema. And then this is an interesting thing that I found not long ago. This is, and I don't remember where this is, maybe Ireland or somewhere over in England, but this is a stone Analema.
Yeah.
Stone. Okay, so this is a big deal, and I was chatting with a friend of mine, my best friend, who's his fiance is a Muslim, and we always talk about religion when they're around. And he said we were talking about tracking the stars, the sun and the moon. He said that was their HBO back then. You know, they didn't have phones or internet or anything.
Nah, that was their calendar.
Okay, so
How to plant crops and all that.
Okay. Okay, if I go any further into this folder, it's going to take me into the Thunderbolts project. Saturn Kronos eats his kids. Okay. So this folder here, let me see. I guess I'll leave the contradictions out. Let me start here with the Jesus parallels, because there's quite a few of them. And I've been arguing with Chuck P. and one or two other people about the parallels between Jesus and the ancient Egyptians and the other mythologies and the other cultures throughout the world. See if I can go full screen and maybe make this a little bit easier. This is Asclepius, which, by the way, I highly suspect, I haven't confirmed it yet, but Asclepius, I think, is Ophiuchus, which is known as the 13th.
I'm sorry, isn't it pronounced Asclepius?
Well, whether you want to use a hard C or not, it's semantics, sweetheart.
Well, it's, yeah. All right.
By the way, Aaron, the Yoruba people call them Babaluaje. That means the father of the world.
Called what, the Babalu?
That kind of statue with a statue that always come with something that they have to use to move around. How you call that? An invalid when he cannot move to support himself. The staff.
A pillar, the staff, or the, okay, I see.
Yeah, they call him Babaluaye, the father of the world, also patron of the sick people. You know, it's the same thing.
Okay, well, so this is Asclepius. He healed the sick. He raised the dead. He was known as the Savior and Redeemer. If you look at the statue, he's got a staff and a serpent twined around the staff. And I'm pretty sure that's Ophiuchus, which is known in the Kemet theology, which is the constellation Ophiuchus is known as the 13th constellation. It was a 5-day period in Egypt, and it was a time when you weren't supposed to do anything. You're not supposed to take on any new endeavors. You're not supposed to start any new projects. Pretty much a 5-day chill out period, which was the 5 day. It was a constellation known as Ophiuchus, and I'm pretty sure that Asclepius, because of the statue, I recognize the statue with a single staff and a single serpent, and so that's that. Okay. This is an image of the world's 16 crucified saviors. I won't read through all of them. I'll expand it out. So if anybody wants to pause the video, they can go through this and have a look at some of these, like Thammuz of Syria and Quetzalcoatl of Mexico, Prometheus of the Caucasus, the Mithra of Persia. And so if anybody wants to read all these, you can pause the video. I'm going to have to shrink that down to in order to get back. Okay. So this is Attis, born of a virgin, born on December 25th, crucified, dead for 3 days, and was resurrected. Greece, 1200 BC. Here's Buddha. One of the disciples is his favorite, and another is a traitor. Does that sound familiar? He and his disciples abstain from wealth and travel around speaking in parables and metaphors. Does that sound familiar? He called himself the Son of Man. He was referred to as a prophet, master, and Lord. He healed the sick, cured the blind and the deaf, and he walked on water. Here's more on Buddha. His mother was told by an angel that she would give birth to a holy child destined to be a savior. Does that sound familiar? As a child, he teaches the priests in his temples about religions while his parents look for him. Again, that's exactly what happened to Jesus. His mother came to the temple while he was preaching, and then he turned her away. He starts his religious career at roughly 30 years of age and is said to have spoken to 12 disciples. Here's Dionysus. Dionysus, by the way, is the Greek god of wine. This is where we get water to wine. Dionysus was the son of God. He was born of a virgin mother, commonly depicted riding on a donkey. He healed the sick. He turned water to wine. He was killed, but was resurrected and became immortal. His greatest accomplishment was his own death, which again is Jesus, which was his greatest accomplishment was his crucifixion, which he delivers humanity himself. Here's Hercules, was born of a divine father and a mortal mother, known as the savior of the world. Prophets foretold of his birth, claimed he would be a king, which started a search by a leader who wanted to kill him. Doesn't that sound familiar? Didn't the Pharaoh want to kill all the firstborn children to prevent Jesus, the Messiah, from reigning on earth? He walked on water. Hercules walked on water, for those of you who don't know. He told his mother, "Don't cry, I'm going to heaven." When he died, As he passed, he said, "It is finished." Here's Horus. There's a break in his life's history, just like Jesus. There's no data between the ages of 12 and 30, just like Jesus. At the age of baptism, he was 30 years old. The fate of his baptizer was beheaded, just like John the Baptist. He walked on water. He cast out demons, healed the sick, restored the sight to the blind. He was crucified, and he was resurrected after 3 days. Here's more on Horus. He was born of a virgin, only begotten son of God Osiris. His birth heralded by the star Sirius. Ancient Egyptians paraded a manger and a child representing Horus through the streets at the time of the winter solstice, about December 21st, just like Jesus. The death threat during infancy, Herut tried to have Horus murdered. Handling the threat, the god that tells Horus's mother, "Come thou goddess Isis, hide thyself with the child." Here's more on Horus. He was known as the light of the world, the good shepherd, the lamb, the way, the truth, the life. His symbol was a cross. Here, again, I'm not going to read all these. And if anybody wants to pause, this is a partial list of 180 parallels between Horus and Jesus. 180 parallels between Horus and Jesus. Here's another part of that list right there. If you want to pause the video and read this list. I'm not going to read all these because I'll be here all night. Here's another part of that list of 180 parables or parallels between Horus and Jesus. And here is another part of that list. So if you want to read all these, you can pause and read and see for yourself. There are 180. Oh, by the way, here's this interesting. Osiris, which is Horus's father. Osiris was chopped into 13 pieces and gathered together by Isis and used an obelisk as a phallic so that she could give birth to Horus. Osiris is actually Lazarus, just so you know. And let me know, because I just bumped my microphone. You guys can still hear me, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, here's some parallels between the Egyptian and the Christian religions. The child Horus as the sower of the seed. Jesus is the sower of the seed. Horus is the founder. Jesus is the founder. Horus is the fulfiller, blah, blah, blah. Pause and read if you want to. Here we go. Here's some more parallels. Joseph and Jesus. The Old Testament, Joseph had a miracle birth. He had 12 brothers. He was sold for 20 pieces of silver, and the sale was suggested by Judah, and he began his work at age 30. And Jesus was a miracle birth, had 12 disciples. He was sold for 30 pieces of silver, and Judas was the one who suggested the sale, began his work at age 30. Here's Krishna. Born of a miraculous conception, wise men were able to come because they were guided by a star. Does that sound familiar? After he was born, an area ruler tried to have him found and killed. His parents were warned by a divine messenger that they escaped. They were met by shepherds. The boy grew up to be the mediator between God and man. That's Krishna, as in the Christos. This is a list of some of the other dying and rising gods. And here are more dying and rising gods. Zalmoxis of Thrace, Zor of the Bonzes, Adad of Assyria, more dying and rising gods, Zoroaster and Mithra of Persia, Indra of Tibet, more dying and rising gods, Buddha, Krishna, Savalia, Zulius, Odin, Horus, Crete of Chaldea. Here's Mithra. His holiday is on Sunday. His followers called themselves brothers and their leaders fathers. They had baptism. They had a meal ritual where symbolic flesh and blood were eaten. That's Mithra. By the way, Mithra is Moses also, because Mithra slays the bull, just as is shown right here. Mithra is known for slaying the bull, just like Moses, which is Mysis of Akkad or Assyria, I think. Mysis of Assyria, I think. Mithra slayed the bull, just like Moses when he came out of the mount and he saw his people worshiping a golden calf. So out with the old, in with the new. Out with Taurus and in with Aries. Here's more on Mithra. Birthday was celebrated on December 25th. His birth was witnessed by local shepherds who brought him gifts. He had 12 disciples. When he was done on earth, he had a fine meal before going up to heaven. On Judgment Day, he'll return to pass judgment on the living and the dead. The good will go to heaven, and the evil will die in a giant fire. So here's Moses. Moses is Mysis of Egypt. He's Minos of Crete, and he's Manu of India, and he's also Mithra. Here's Osiris, born of a virgin, considered the first true king of the people. When he died, he rose from the grave and he went to heaven. Here's Sargon, which is also Moses. He's placed in a basket, set adrift in a river to avoid infanticide, rescued and raised by royalty, just like Moses. Here's Tammuz, born on December 25th, born of a virgin, Lord and Savior, the healer. He was mocked and humiliated, descended into the underworld, just like Jesus. He was raised from the dead. This is Sumeria, 2600 years BC. Here is from the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is Utnapishtim. He was a global flood caused by man's sins, intended for all mankind, sent by gods, ordered to build a boat, one door on the boat, at least one window, just like the ark, outside coating with pitch. Human passengers were family members, all kinds of land animals. Please turn a light on, sweetheart. Too dark in here. Thank you. He released a bird to find land. Just turn that. Thank you. Sacrificed after the. There was a sacrifice after the flood, and blessed after the flood, and then back to Asclepius. So I will close that window, and I will show you some really interesting shit. So, since Jesus is a solar deity, and I've already covered the Analema on September 11th, Jesus is born of a virgin, which is Virgo. And if you go and you look at religious artwork, like if you just go on a Google search and you look for the Virgin Mary, what you'll find almost always that she has a white robe and a blue cloak. And almost always she's standing on a serpent. As you can see, it's barely visible, but it wraps around and it goes behind, and then it comes up around on the bottom left-hand corner. She's standing on a serpent. But the moon is at her feet. Now, this orb that she's standing on in this particular image is more representative of the celestial orb, or the celestial, the body, all the stars. So she's got the sun dress. There's little sun symbols on her dress. She's always in white and blue because women are associated with water. They give birth when their water breaks. Women are also associated with blood because of their monthly cycle. And every once in a while, you'll see the Virgin Mary dressed in pink. Mary is known as the High Priestess. The word Magdalene is known as the Tower of Knowledge. Here is another ancient, I think this is Renaissance painting of the Virgin Mary. Here she's wearing a red dress, but look at her feet. She's standing on the moon, and she's standing on a serpent. And I'm going to explain this to you. I'm going to open up Stellarium in a minute, and I'm going to show you exactly. This is Virgo with the moon at her feet, and she's standing on a serpent. That serpent is the serpent of Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is the 13th constellation. He's known as the wrestler. He wrestles the serpent. And when you look at the constellations, the serpent of Ophiuchus goes right under the feet of Virgo. And that's why when you look at religious artwork from the Renaissance period and plus or minus that time period, you almost always you're going to see the Virgin Mary with a serpent under her feet, and 99.9% of the time there'll be a moon under her feet. And as you can see here, this little cherub character on the left, on Mary's right side, what does he have in his hand? But he's got a chaff of wheat, because Virgo is known as the house of bread, and the constellation Virgo, she's carrying a chaff of wheat. Now here's a couple more just to drive it home. Here's another Virgin Mary, and she's standing on a gray orb, which is the moon, and there is the serpent at her feet. Here's another one. There's the moon and the serpent at her feet. Here's another one. This, by the way, is a high priestess. This is a tarot card. This is a Freemasonic tarot card. Obviously, we've got the black and white, the day and night, Jacqueline and Boaz. We got the two pillars, but in between, we've got the Virgin Mary. She's dressed in a white robe, and she's cloaked in a blue cloak. And behind her are shafts of wheat and corn and grapes, and the moon is at her feet because September, which is the sign of Virgo, is the beginning of the harvest. That's why she carries the shaft of wheat. Nahash is the Hebrew word for snake, by the way, and some of these are out of order, so I'll just explain as I go. This is an interesting thing here from Leviticus. Who is not allowed to approach the temple of God? Again, this is out of order, but I'll just leave this up for a minute if anybody wants to read it. These are a list of people who are not, that God says you're not allowed to approach the temple. If you have crushed testicles or a flat nose or a broken foot, or you're a dwarf, you're not welcome. All right, let me get out of this for a second. Let me see if I know where I put Ophiuchus. I've just got so much shit here. It's a little bit out of order. Somewhere around here, I've got a picture of Ophiuchus. And if not, I'll pull him up on Stellarium.
Aaron.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know that the constellation represents a part of the body, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you go back to the people that cannot enter into the higher holies of holies, do you check the parts? Maybe they are 12 parts there that represent the constellations.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I'll have to go back and check that. I'm not going to do it now, but very.
Every part mentioned there should represent a constellation.
Well, Amy, that list that I just showed you was a partial list, because the list. It's actually wrong. I suspect. Now, that's interesting, but I suspect it may not be what Laz thinks it is, because if I'm not mistaken, the list of things that may be wrong with you that would prevent you from entering the temple is, I'm pretty sure it's longer than 12, but it's an interesting perspective.
Well, the temple is the head.
Yes.
Okay, it's the head. They say the place of the skull, where Sukkot Jesus was
crucified at Golgotha, which is
the place of the skull. So that's the temple.
Correct.
And the holies of holies is the pineal gland.
That's correct. Golgotha is the known as the skull place.
Yeah, because once you finish with what you're doing, let me know, because I'm going to tell you how you are reading this, only half of it.
Okay. Real quick, let me just quiz you real quick, just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Do you guys know where the word hallelujah comes from?
Seems I heard once, but it's been a while.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Check this out. The etymology of the word halal. Hey, ha, means of or the. Lel or Lael is night or mountain. Okay. Halel, behold Mount Lel. Lucifer.
Well, every time you see a reference to the mountain in the Bible, is nothing more than the same thing. The skull is the highest place. Just you can call it.
No. Well, maybe, not always, because Yahweh is actually a volcano god mixed with an air god. It's an amalgamation between an air god and a volcano god.
If you read it literally, yes. But
when
any reference,
pillar of fire by night and pillar of smoke by day, that is a volcano.
Yes.
Not necessarily, but go ahead. Well, we can go into that later. But what I'm trying to say, when you see a mountain reference like Mount Zion, Mount Nero, Mount Hallel, when you see any reference to the mountain, like the mountain that Satan took Jesus to show them the whole world, that's the head. You can only You can only see reality with your brain. You can only look at the whole world with your brain, and then you can say I want it all, or you can say I don't want anything. But that's the interpretation of that passage.
Cool. Interesting. Excellent. Excellent. Well, this is just following the etymological root of the word Hillel. Turns out it's Lucifer. It's the light bearer, the shining one, the morning star, which, by the way, is also Jesus, because Jesus himself says that I am the bright and morning star.
Yes.
So
It's also an allegory to the pineal gland.
So here, this specific Bible passage, it says, this is from Isaiah 14, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? This is a reference to the planet Venus, because in the Bible it says that Lucifer wants to raise himself above the Most High, and the Most High is the sun or God, depending on how you look at it. But the star Venus, and by the way, I know Venus is a planet, but the planets are also known as wandering stars because of their retrograde. So they're known as wandering stars. So Venus is the brightest thing in the sky right before the morning sun. And so the Venus rises before the sun. So he is the light bearer. He brings the sun. And then he rises to the high point, which is high noon, which is above the Most High, because he reaches it before the sun. And then he's cast out of heaven, and he falls, just like the passage says, how art thou cut down to the ground. And so Lucifer, or in this case Venus, is cast out of heaven and then down to the horizon. So that's the story of Lucifer.
In astrotheology, yes.
In astrotheology, yes. So this
not
is
not in metaphysical or spirituality.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct.
It's a different story.
I got you. We're on astrotheology right now.
Yeah.
I got you. But you can interrupt me anytime, Laz.
Well, you want to know what the interpretation of that is?
Well, I'm open. I'm willing to listen to anything you have to say, bro.
Well, if you go back to the other one that you were talking about there, I mean, the first thought that the individual have is man-made, and that the first thought, that is intuition, is right by the original operating system. That is a natural reaction based on the operation system. The other thought that the individual have when they cannot interpret things right, or cannot understand, or cannot accept it, is the lower mind. That is the individual personality. So they're talking about individual natural state or personality. So personality, if the higher mind stop functioning and the personality take over, then how low can you go when you think that you know better than the original operating system that is in the individual.
Man, you really got your finger on the spiritual aspect of all this stuff.
I don't know. I'm trying to tell you how I see it. Either I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but I'm telling you another interpretation from the spiritual point of view.
I'm just telling you, you're making a lot of sense.
Because you spend a lot of time researching evolution of man from the materialistic point of view, and I spent almost all my life studying the evolution of conscience in man. So to me, when you talk about evolution, I look at it as the evolution of consciousness, and you look at it as an evolution of the body of the human being. So. But then again, there's also other interpretations of that passage. So I'm just saying that that's the way I see it. If anyone in the chat can correct me or whatever, it doesn't matter, because I'm here to learn.
Well, it's not like I've ignored the spiritual aspect. It's just that I haven't spent the amount of time that you
cannot ignore it as much as no matter how much you try.
I know.
It's there in the original operation system or operation software, and we're gonna go.
I agree.
We're gonna go back.
I agree with you there. It's that shit's really hard to ignore, even if you try.
Yeah.
Okay, so Halel is actually the original name of Lucifer. And so that's where we get the word hallelujah. And I
And
just
probably where we get the word for hell.
yeah, probably, absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Okay, so let me see. I'll tell you what I'm going to do now. I can come back to this file because I've got tons and tons of Bible passages and contradictions that we can cover if you want to. Here's something interesting just before I forget. Nahash is the Hebrew word for snake. Now, you guys have probably all, except for Amy, because she doesn't watch movies or TV, I assume you've seen Harry Potter.
I have seen one Harry Potter movie.
Okay, well, Harry Potter was what they call a parcel tongue, which means that he could speak to animals. And in his particular case, he had the ability to speak to serpents. He could speak to snakes.
Mm-hmm.
And he spoke this weird language that was littered with S's. It was very S dominant, right?
Right.
That phonetic, it was phonetically dominant with the letter S. And this Nahash, when I came across this Nahash, which is the Hebrew word for snake, it immediately rang bells in my head because I'm a Harry Potter fan. I'm a nerd, and when I saw this Nahash, I remember when Harry was speaking to the serpents in the movie, he actually said that word Nahash. And it wasn't until way after the fact, when I came across that Hebrew word for serpent, that it dawned on me that, oh my God, they weren't just making shit up for Harry to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you don't understand the body talking to you, then you don't talk the language of your body. The snake, the way the body talk to the individual in the head is through that language.
And astrotheology seems to permeate our world in crazy ways. Let me see. Oh, you know what, everybody? I forgot to mention Gandalf has been busy, and he might be joining us because I just got a Skype message from him. Let me see real quick. Let me see. I'm just going to tell him to come on in. All right. So Gandalf was busy, and he's back, and so he might be joining us any minute. Anyway, speaking of afterthoughts, this is Ahura Mazda right there. Okay. So here's an image of Ahura Mazda. Among other things, this is Ahura Mazda up there at the very top. And if you're a Star Trek fan, then you know Lieutenant Uhura. And if you drive cars, then you know the auto manufacturer known as Mazda. And there used to be an automaker, they came and went, but there was a car maker named Saturn. And
right.
I don't have a list. This is a list that I wanted to make. I just haven't done it. Let me see. The Dodge manufacturing company, they have the Dodge Ram. And Nissan, the Japanese car maker, Nissan, is the Hebrew month of Nisan, which is, I think, in April, which is the month of Nisan or Nisan, depending on how you pronounce it. And Ford, by the way, has the Ford Galaxy. And I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but I mean, I could go through almost all of them, and I've just shit that I've noticed in my travels that I find.
That's what I asked you when you asked me one month that was, or what date that was, and I told you April, because in the Bible, pretty much everything good is starting in Nisan. Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So
that's what I assume it was April.
Well, what brought me to April on that date, not specifically in the Analema, but for like Jesus's birth is the fact that they were going going to pay taxes, and taxes have been collected in April
For thousands
gazillions of years. Yes.
And that's what I figured
Very
it was
long time.
April. I figured it was April.
That's right. And the tax collector is represented by the scales, because they would sometimes gather wheat and barley and crops and goats and sheep, and not always money. So they would weigh
Right.
out.
They worry about what the weight was that they were collecting.
That's right. That's right. So let me see. I'll tell you what I'm going to do real quick. I am going to open up, and I hope my computer doesn't crash, because Stellarium is a pretty hefty program. I'm going to start up Stellarium. I want to show you guys a couple of things.
You probably will crash because right now you're just putting out those pictures and it's buffering. Yeah, it's doing the robot thing. Hopefully.
That's because I'm looking at the Hangout window, and it does that every time. So that's okay.
Oh, okay.
It's showing you what's on my screen, and there's a feedback loop, and so it does that. And
Okay.
This program takes a moment to open up, and it's starting. So just give this a second here.
So Aaron, before you go into that, let me ask you a question. You mentioned before that you can see the correlation of the above, so it's below the macro and the micro, right? You can see that relation.
I see it everywhere I go and everything I do,
Okay, because
every aspect of life, my friend.
what you're going to talk about now is the macro.
Yes. What I'm going to talk about now is the fact that this program, Stellarium, which shows you, this is an amazing piece of software. You can look at what the stars and the sun and the moon and the planets are doing at any given moment in time, going all the way back to the birth of Christ. And you can look at the stars from any place on Earth in any time you want to. You could go and look at what the stars were doing in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago if you wanted to with this software. Now, what I need to do is I need to turn on a few constellation lines. Let me see. I'm going to turn on constellation labels. I want to turn on the constellation artwork. And then what I can do, I need to open up the timer so I can crank the clock. And I forgot where that is. Ground, cardinal points, atmosphere, deep sky. This thing's got just shitloads of tools. Planet labels, night mode, satellites. It tracks satellites, all kinds of shit. Set normal time rate, decrease time speed. Here's another toolbar. I think there it is. Date time window. There it is. Okay, you open up this date time window right here that I have. This thing right here. And what you can do is you can crank the clock forward and backward, and you can make the sky move. So you can look at the whole sky. Okay. But before I do, I want to show you this, because I was talking earlier about Virgo. So right here at the bottom of my screen on the right-hand side is Virgo, okay? And you can see she's carrying a chaff of wheat. Virgo is known as the house of bread. Virgo, being the month of September, is the first of the harvest months. It's the ember month. September, October, November, December, those are the ember months. Those are when the leaves change and they turn from red, yellow, and orange colors. But look below Virgo's feet. You see here on the left side is Ophiuchus. And Ophiuchus is the wrestler, and he's got this giant serpent. So there's always this serpent underneath of the feet of Virgo, just like the pictures of the Virgin Mary I showed you, where she's always standing on a serpent. Now, if I crank the clock, let me see, I get back to the horizon. There's this subject is so deep. There's Crater, the constellation Crater, which is the chalice. There's Corvus, the constellation, or otherwise known as a lesser constellation, which is known as a deacon, which is also interesting because the church has church members. Some of them are known as deacons. This constellation Corvus is the dove. It's a sparrow. It's a crow. This is the bird that was released by Noah. Here we have Scorpius, Scorpio, Scorpius. If I crank the clock, let me see what date, time. Those are the days. Up, down. That's too much. I'll put it back, and then I'm going to go. There we go. If I crank it slowly, this is what it looks like as the constellations and the stars rise and fall on the horizon. So there's the moon right here. You can see it right above Sagittarius. Okay. If I crank it back, there's the moon moving to the right. So these are days. So every day the moon moves in this pattern right here. There's the moon. So there's the moon at the feet of Virgo, and she's standing on a serpent. There's Virgo with the moon at her feet and the serpent underfoot. Now, if I crank the clock backwards, and I've not done this before, I haven't gone this far back, and there's another aspect. I haven't changed location. I haven't learned how to do that. I'm still new to the program. I haven't figured out how to change my location. But if I go to, say, Jerusalem, and I go 2,000 years ago, what you'll see is the sun making its motion going through the analemma, and the sun will be right here, being born of the Virgin, the Virgo, with the moon at her feet and the serpent of Ophiuchus, and the sun will be in the crux or the cross point of the analemma as it makes the figure 8 through the solar cycle. And right here, it'll be September 11th, that fateful day, September 11th, when the sun is born in the sign of Virgo with the moon at her feet, just like it says in the Bible, and just like the pictures of the Virgin Mary with the serpent underfoot and the moon underfoot. And then here, just to the right of Virgo, is Leo. So this is where the constellation chart starts, Virgo, and it ends in Leo. So when you crank the clock backwards, this is what you get. You get the start of Virgo, and then you get the end with Leo. So when it comes to astrotheology, this doesn't just apply to theology. The interesting thing about this is every story you've ever heard in your entire fucking life, from Puff the Magic Dragon to Alice in Wonderland, I don't care what story or what fable or nursery rhyme you ever heard, it's written in the stars, all of it, every single bit of it. I'm not sure if I can, yeah, I can shrink that down a little bit right there. So I can crank this clock backwards, and you can see the motions of the constellations and the stars as they move through the day and the night. There's the moon. There's the constellation of Gemini, which is the twins right there, Castor and Pollux, right there in the sign of Gemini. The two twins, Castor and Pollux. Now check this out. You know the story of Alice in Wonderland, for instance. Alice looks through the looking glass. Yeah? Everybody knows that. All right?
Yep.
Right here above the constellation Hydra, we have the Sextans constellation. Right below Leo is the Sextans. A sextant is a tool used by mariners to navigate. They use the navigation tool to chart the stars, and it would tell them where they are. A sextant is known as a looking glass. Alice is Virgo. So Alice, okay, Gandalf just finished eating. He'll be in a couple of minutes. Alice looks through the sextant, looks through the looking glass, and what does she see? If you draw a line right straight through Virgo, straight through the sextant, what do you see? You see the dog star Sirius right there on the horizon. Everybody see that? right there in the bottom center of the screen.
Yuppers.
There's Sirius, the dog star. And what is the dog star doing? But he's chasing the rabbit, Lepus. There it is right there. Look at that.
Nice.
So that's Alice looking through the looking glass, chasing the rabbit down the rabbit hole. And the rabbit goes down, down, down as the constellations go down below the horizon. Not only that, but in between, we also have the constellation Pyxis right here, which is right there. The constellation Pyxis. And what is that? But it is a compass. And look, that's a giant ship. And I forget the name of that constellation. Let me crank this up and see if I can get that. This constellation is huge, and recently has been split into 3 separate constellations. Change the days. There it is, coming up. Change the months a little bit. This constellation is the ship or the boat, which is the Ark.
The Argo?
Argos, thank you. Yes, Argos. So Alice's father in Alice in Wonderland, if everybody remembers the story, what is her dad famous for? She's wealthy. Her dad was a shipping magnate. And this constellation Argo or Argos is another aspect of the story Jason and the Argonauts.
Yep.
So back to astrotheology, here we have the constellation of Orion, and everybody knows about the belt of Orion with the 3 stars. Right?
Yep.
Right there. Well, looky. If you follow these stars in the belt of Orion, draw a straight line through the stars of Orion, they point straight to Sirius, the dog star, which is the brightest star in the sky. This is the star from the east that the 3 magi followed. The 3 magi who followed Christ followed the star in the east. The 3 magi are the belt of Orion following Sirius, the dog star. And what do you see if you follow that? But if you draw a line straight through, it takes you almost straight. Not quite, really. But it takes you to Virgo, where the sun is born in Virgo. Now, I have to crank the time scale all the way back, I think, and I have to relocate. I have to go to Jerusalem to view the sky, and I still don't know how to change my location. But, and there's Perseus, by the way. Born of a virgin. He slayed the snake-headed lady, the, what's her name? Forget off the top of my head. I forget. But it's all there, man. It's all in the freaking sky. It's all in the stars. Every story you've ever heard, I don't care what story. I don't
Medusa.
Go
Medusa
ahead.
is
Medusa, yes, thank you. I just left my brain for a minute there. So yeah, man, every story you've ever heard in your entire life is right here in the sky.
I'm curious. What if it's a story that your dad made up? You know, he started telling his story and was just making it up as he went along.
Well, then probably not.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So there must be some percentage of stories that are stories that people just made up.
Yeah, but that doesn't count because, I mean, if I told you the story of Alice in Wonderland, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about stories that we've all heard, the stories that permeate our culture.
Fair enough. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we had clarification on that.
Not just your average, day-to-day creative
writing stuff,
Yes.
but the classical stuff,
Uh-huh.
shall we call it?
Yeah. So in the stars, we have the constellation of Sagittarius, and it's not on my screen right here. But everybody knows that Sagittarius is the water bearer. He carries a pitcher of water.
No, that's Aquarius.
Aquarius, thank you. Sorry.
I know because I'm an Aquarian.
Okay, so Aquarius carries the pitcher of water. He's the water bearer. And there's a parable where Jesus says, I shall be with you until the end of the world, which is, by the way, a mistranslation. The original Greek and Hebrew text says the end of the eon, which translates to age.
Yes.
And the earth, the precession of the equinox from one constellation to the next is known as an age. The age of Aquarius, the age of Pisces.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, he said, go over there, follow the man that enter into the house.
That's right. He says that you'll see a man bearing a pitcher of water, follow him into the house. By the way, a constellation is known as a house.
House, yes.
Yep.
And there are other parables in the Bible that says where Jesus says, my Father's house has many abodes.
Yes.
So we're talking about the stars again and again.
Well, like I said before, the stars is half of the story. But you go ahead and continue. When you're done with it, let me know.
No, you go ahead, man. But you're right. It is half the story because there's a whole spirituality aspect.
Yes.
You're totally right, Laz, and I'm not trying to knock that at all.
Yeah, because astrology, that when people that follow the zodiac, they it's easier for those people, or even common people know that if you are born in a particular house or particular constellation, under a particular constellation, that is the position of the sun in a particular constellation, then you have a certain traits, certain personality. So constellations affect personalities. So then we can see how the relationship between the microcosmos and the macro. That is that the macro that you show in there is only half of the story. The other story is in the individual, is in the body of the man. So, for example, when in Genesis in the Bible, when the people said, and God created men, the right translation is the Elohims created men, not one God. Elohims, that means many.
Yes.
Also,
plural.
there is plural. There is another thing. The word that used as created, that is in past tense, is not created, but is molding. Not creating from nothing. It's molding. That is making the individual into the likeness of the Elohim. So if you just common sense tell us that if every orb we call planet or every constellation makes the personality on the individual, that means that constellation is making that individual. I mean, that constellation is making that individual in their image. Do you get it? Do you understand?
You were breaking up a little bit. Just repeat the last one or two sentences.
Okay, if individuals born in different zodiac, in different houses of the zodiac, have different personalities.
Yeah.
That means that if we look at the Bible that says that the man is being molded in the image and likeness of their creator, that means that
oh, I see what you're going. Yeah.
Molding the individual in the image of the pattern of the behavior.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Absolutely.
So, well, and then if we don't look pretty much as constellations, but if we take in doubt a little, a notch, and we just concentrate here in the solar system, then we will see how the planets, that is the orbs that go around the sun in the solar system, are the Elohims refer in the Bible, because every orb produce a different vibration. So see, if you are born when that orb is closer to the earth, that is reflecting the radiation from the sun at in an angle that is in a 30-degree angle, which that's what the cross represents, then the individual born that day will have a trait, a personality characteristic of the orb close to the earth at that particular time. So that planet or that orb is considered to be the father of that individual, that is creating, is molding the individual in that image. Because then again, we got to go back to sematics, what you said that you like, that everything is energy, vibration, and frequency.
Oh yeah, okay. You know what? That's a good segue, because I did want to cover cymatics, and people in the chat right now are talking about DNA, and I
cymatics affect DNA, and if the vibration of the planet that you are born in have a particular vibration,
right,
then your DNA is going to be formed. That is the personality, not only physically but personality of the individual is going to be affected.
Right, exactly. Hey, Gandalf, welcome, brother. You have anything you want to add? Because we got about 30 minutes left, and I'm going to cover a little bit of cymatics before we get out of here.
Oh, man, this is like one of my favorite subjects. This is not so much astrology, cymatics. I love this entire subject. Ever since I got into the 0 point, you know, how there's the patterns embedded in the entire universe.
All right, I am going to show you some shit that I have on cymatics. Here's my... Now, I also, somewhere in my archive of my YouTube, I got a folder of all the YouTube videos I've ever uploaded. But I did some cymatic experiments in my basement of my own.
Oh, man, I loved those.
And oh, you've seen them?
Oh yeah, I remember one night when you were doing a hangout. I think it was almost like 2 years. Like,
oh yeah. And I took my computer downstairs and I did it live.
That was before me.
Oh really? Darn, you missed
Yep.
it. I might just upload those videos.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, so this is cymatics, and for those people who don't know what cymatics is, this is where sound interacts with matter. And basically what you do is you take a speaker and you put it upside down, or you put it with a cone facing upward on the floor, make sure it's level. You put a steel plate on top of it, and then you pour something like salt or sugar or some sort of particle type of a medium like coffee grounds. I've tried with like drywall dust and shit like that. And then you apply sound frequencies. And every time you hit the same frequency, you get the same pattern. And the higher the frequency, the more intricate the pattern. Now, there's 3 aspects to cymatics that almost nobody will tell you about. And I discovered this on my own through experiments, and I'm a musician, and so I understand a little bit about the physics of sound. I also know that music is 3-dimensional, which is very rarely talked about. But the 3 aspects are tone, frequency, and volume. Because I can tinker with my little sound generator, my frequency generator, and I can get the particles to start to dance around a little bit, but they don't jump into a pattern until I crank up the volume. So I might have the right frequency, and I might have a particular tone, which is kind of irrelevant. It's not really irrelevant. It's very relevant, but you have a tone and a frequency. And the difference between tone and frequency, for those who don't understand, is the difference between an A note on a guitar and an A note on a piano, or an A note with a human voice, or an A note on a trumpet. They're all A notes. It's all the same frequency, but you're distinctly different tones. They have tonal qualities.
Right, right.
Different, okay? So you have tone, you have frequency, and then you have volume, which is the amount of energy you put into the experiment. So in this case, we get a pattern like this, that gives you the hexagram pattern with the circular pattern also following. But here's another one here. This is a cymatic, an image of a cymatic frequency. And you guys tell me what you think that looks like.
I think it looks like a
Coral reef.
sponge.
Coral to me.
A coral
Yes.
reef, a brain.
Sponge.
Exactly. How about this one? What is that? These are cymatics, by the way. What does that look like?
Piles of
Crystals?
crystals.
Crystals?
Yes, crystals. Thank you very much. How about that one?
Almost like a honeycomb, but not quite.
Right, right.
Blood cells.
What about that one? Good one, Laz. It does look like blood cells. What's that one look like?
Looks like the stomach of a lizard or something.
Yes,
like that.
it does.
I was going to say tire track, but I knew
Or
I didn't have the right answer.
the bottom side of the snake.
Yes.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
That
Like a
looks
tumor.
like coral.
A tumor.
Landscape.
Yeah. Definitely could be landscape.
So this is macro and micro. What does that look like?
That
Fish-
looks like a fish.
Fish bones.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Caterpillar.
Kind of looks like a human spinal cord
That too.
or a human spine. What does that look like?
That looks like galaxy formation.
You're fucking A right.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting thing about cymatics, when you watch the interaction with the particles as they're interacting during a live experiment, you can see that there's a twisting motion. And so the whole cymatic action is happening in 3 dimensions.
Yep.
Now,
But let me ask you, Aaron.
hang on real quick. You can hold your question. I just want to say that this particular image that I'm showing right now, for anybody interested in the subject of cymatics, the image I'm showing you right now is a opening thumbnail of a video, and everything here, all the information. If you want to pause this video and go and do a search and find this particular documentary, I think this thing was made in the 70s.
Okay. This for Border of Chaos. If you were interested, check this documentary out. I'm pretty sure this is the bit where Arthur C. Clarke talks, right?
I think so, maybe. But also, look, the guy sitting there, he's sitting in front of an old Indian rug, and look at the pattern of the rug. It's a cymatic pattern.
Yep.
So go ahead, Laz.
Oh, I was going to ask you, you said that you did the experiment and you have the speaker, you have whatever material you were using, and then you have whatever apparatus that make the sound, right? Or transmit the sound to the speaker.
Yeah, that was a CONHWC. I think that might have been maybe number 10 or 12 or something like that, wasn't it?
It was.
Okay, so
It was an early show, but basically, Laz, you've got you hook up a speaker to a frequency generator so that you can adjust the frequency.
okay, that's what I'm trying to get. You have a frequency generator, you have a speaker, and then you have the substance.
Yes.
Okay, so if you have the sun and you have the planet, then the planet will transmit that vibration and
That's
create.
right. Correct.
And so that's what I'm trying to get. That's what I was telling you about the Elohims. So whatever planet is at the particular period of the Earth's history is closer to the Earth, it will bounce out that energy from the sun, and it will create a type of life.
That's correct. And
That's what I'm trying to.
And most people are familiar with the Schumann resonance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the Earth puts out a frequency. All the planets, the moon, the stars, they put out frequencies.
Oh, I was just gonna say that, man.
Yeah.
Energy frequency is Tesla. Tesla said it right. Energy frequencies are vibrations. So
That's what it's all about.
So check this out. Okay, here's another image. Doesn't that look like a mollusk or something?
It looks like an early.
I thought it looked
one of those early little creatures that used to like gather up waste on the ocean floor.
Almost like a fingerprint, even. Now look at this.
I tell you.
Now talk about DNA. Look at these images. These are cymatic images. Look at the bottom row. What is that? Look at that bottom row, guys. That is fucking DNA.
Pretty deep.
Oh, wow, man.
That is DNA, my friends.
And this looks like snowflakes. When you get into this type of information, this is what's known as a repeating pattern. Like when you see these images and they remind you of different things, it's because they're based off of a repeating pattern that's originating from the very center of the universe. This is also known as universal background radiation. This is the energy grid that percolates the entire universe.
Right.
And did even before the Big Bang.
Right. That is DNA, my friends. So when I listen to like debates between atheists and religious apologists, and the religious apologists are always ask the same question when they get to the kalam, the cosmological argument that they always try to throw at us. They always say, well, the universe began and nothing from nothing, and how did life get started, and how you can't get something from nothing, you can't get life from non-life, et cetera, et cetera. This is their argument. And I'm saying bullshit. I'm saying right here is the science, and this is a science. It's repeatable. You can do these experiments yourself. This is a science. Cymatics is a fucking known science, and this shit has been known for 100 years. And the science is that if you get the right medium and the right frequency and the right tone and the right volume, by the way, frequency, tone, and volume, I call that the Holy Trinity.
Yep.
And you will get DNA, my friends. You have amino acids floating in free space or even on a planet with some gravity. But you get the right frequency and the right tone and the right volume, and DNA will form itself naturally. It's a natural occurrence of the universe.
But I don't think, man, I honestly don't think it is. I think this is some kind of grid that's embedded into reality itself, and it's embedded into the universal background radiation.
It's embedded via physics, Mary. It's physics. Yes, it's embedded. It's just part of the physics. It's part of the material world that we live in.
Yep.
But to me,
it can create form. It can create form, but I don't see how it can create consciousness or awareness.
I think that's I think the reason that we see that is because we're at this low level understanding of the universe at this point. We still don't understand everything there is to know, aside from what some guy in a lab suit's going to tell you. I think that this is, in 100, 2,000 years, we might be able to understand what all this means properly. But right now, we're still at such a low level of understanding. This is like the beginning of understanding about the universe and how it was created.
Now, look at this image on the right side. On the very far right side, there's 1, 2, 3, at least 3 little sections that look almost exactly like a human spine.
True.
And that brings us all the way full circle, all the way around. Now, while I'm screen sharing, I will try real quick. This is a big folder because it's got all my YouTube videos. And there it is right there. I've got my cymatics folder right there. You guys want to see my cymatics experiments?
Sure.
Oh, nice. I thought it was maybe on like one of those old CONHWCs that got deleted.
Well, my channel, my first channel was deleted, and I haven't re-uploaded this stuff.
Oh, fuck, you saved this, man.
I saved everything that goes on YouTube. I've got a folder that Sorry, I know why I did that. Go to that. Check this out. This is my own. I made a fucking I made a scarab beetle by accident. And by the way, so here I've got
flashback. I remember this.
I think I've seen these, but I wasn't on the show when you did it.
Here I use my didgeridoo.
Wild. Sweet.
See, that's how the Kemetic people move the big blocks around.
Exactly, Laz.
Yep.
Actually, they didn't have to move the blocks. They can get sand and get it to stick together if they have the right frequency.
If I could ever find the footage of those guys who used to, what they would do was they would circle the rock with the metal drums, and they'd all at the same instant bang on their metal drums. It was like some type of aluminum. And they eventually were able to push, one guy was able to push his hand into the stone, and it was like the stone became like cement. He was able to put a handprint into the stone.
Wow.
That's it.
Look at that pattern right there.
Sweet. I love patterns in sand and stuff.
I'm not sure how I'm going to do this because I think I need 4 hands to do it. Whole part extending. Basically, this is an old. I got the glass completely leveled, and I'm using salt. So this is the same experiment, except I'm using glass instead of plastic. I've got a piece of glass, and I've got it leveled out, and I'm doing the same. Except I'm using my guitar and some other stuff. So I took a little trial and error. Certain frequencies seem to have a lot more effect than others, obviously. And the lower frequencies seem to bother the salt a little bit more. And what I'm doing here is... wave. So this is where the combination of tone, frequency, and volume come in. Since I'm using my guitar, I've got very little control over all 3 aspects. I can control the... I'm on the 12th fret E string right now. I can control the frequency only by the frets of my guitar, not fine tuning, but only by the frets. And I can control the volume a little bit. Previous standing wave dissipates. What I didn't do is I didn't try to like crank and tweak on my amplifier, my guitar amplifier. I didn't try to use like different tones. That's something I haven't tried yet.
That tell you right there that the guy playing the music in the universe is the one we call creator.
Now check this out. Watch this. Here's where I make a scarab beetle by accident. Watch. Watch. Watch there. When I get the right tone, look at it. Boom. Watch. Look at that. Look at that wave.
Looks like 2 cells.
Wow.
Look, it's even got little pincers in the front, and it's got little wings on the sides over here on the far left and bottom right corner. Top left corner, bottom right corner. It's got little wings. Look at that. Scarab beetle.
Wow, it's like, yeah, it is like a scarab.
Isn't that fucking cool?
It even looks 3-dimensional.
Yeah, it does, dude.
Isn't that fucking cool?
Wow, that's
awesome.
We have to do a show completely devoted to this now.
Yeah. Awesome.
I just want to add in one thing. Are you guys familiar with the Lord of the Rings at all? Like the backstory of it?
A little bit.
Well, in the backstory of the Lord of the Rings, it's kind of like the prequel of the Lord of the Rings. It's called the Silmarillion. Oh,
Oh,
geez.
the Silmarillion. Oh my gosh, that is. I tried to read that.
Oh, we lost
I
Ruth.
could not.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for Ruth to get back, I'll just mention this. Well, and it relates to this in my mind completely. In the Silmarillion, basically, it's the backstory of the Lord of the Rings, and at the very, very beginning of the Silmarillion is the creation myth of Middle Earth, and how it goes
Right.
is there was this god, and the god's name was Iluvatar, and he created lesser gods that would live under him, and they were called the Maya. And the Maya, basically, there were ones like Manwë, Yavanna, and there was Melkor, who eventually was like the big bad guy, who was like the guy who came before Sauron. But basically, Iluvatar instructed the Maya, so these lesser gods, to create a type of music, and he gave them the exact type of music that he wanted them to play, and they went on to play this music. And it said in the Silmarillion, the prequel of the Lord of the Rings, that this vibration and this frequency gave form to the entire universe, and it gave form to Middle Earth itself. But there was one guy who used to like to play the music slightly off key, and that was Melkor. And it was Melkor's tampering with the music that Iluvatar had given the gods that created the disturbance which led to the darkness existing in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's
Interesting.
astrotheology.
Something's always creeped me out when it comes to cymatics and the Silmarillion creation story, that it was vibration and music frequency that gave birth to the entire universe.
Yeah. Tesla said, energy, frequency, and vibration.
Yeah, and I think we're at the very beginning points humanity is of understanding this. I'm certain that they got some laboratory somewhere underground, somewhere where they've been experimenting on this for 50 years, and they probably
actually we got it before. We rediscovering now, because that's
I believe it.
that's what all the monuments, that's what all the holy books and the stories and the holy book that talk about the constellations and how influence life in this planet. That's what they talk about. So they knew. Now we are rediscovering.
Yeah, like you ever seen where they go to the pyramids and they vibrate the walls of the it's like these retaining walls at one side of the Giza pyramids, and it creates this. It sounds like a bell dinging when you just tap the stone. Like they used to design these structures to incorporate this energy.
Look at it this way, G. If you can match exactly the vibration of an object, you can lift it. You can move it around. It will have no weight. And if you can vibrate raw material at the same frequency of the object you want to create, then you can duplicate that object. So if you get, let's say you get a cup, and any cup, and you know the frequency, exact frequency of that cup, you can duplicate that cup out of raw material. You don't need a production line. You can just use frequency to create objects.
Man, that's fascinating, bro.
Hey, Blue Blood said he's got a glass coffee table and he's going to try this experiment. Blue, I just want to give you a piece of advice, a warning to you. The salt, if you use salt or whatever medium, you might try sugar. You might try other types of small particles like sand, coffee grounds. Like I said, I tried drywall dust, all kind of different little particle mediums. If you're going to do this on your coffee table in your living room, I recommend you put down a big fucking drop cloth, because that shit bounces off the table and you're going to get salt or sugar or whatever. It's going to go all over the floor, on the carpet. So my advice right off the bat is be prepared to have whatever you use, it bounces around and half of it bounces off and you're constantly having to add salt to the experiment. Make sure your coffee table is as level as you can get it, okay, from corner to corner, left and right. and diagonally, make sure it's perfectly level, and just make sure you start off with like a tarp or a drop cloth to catch the shit as it falls off the table. So you don't make a mess in your living room because it won't stay on the glass. Trust me. So if you try that shit in your living room, you're going to make a mess.
Or just vacuum afterwards.
Yeah, well, I mean,
just a bit of sugar.
I want to let you know that stuff, it goes everywhere. But it's so interesting because I use drywall dust. I'm a contractor, and I gathered up. I was doing a job, and I sweep and cleaned up all my. And I was doing this experiments, and so I was doing this job, and I collected my drywall dust in a separate bag, and I brought it home. And there were little pieces, little chunks between the fine dust. There was fine dust, medium dust, and then there were like little tiny, like broken pieces, like the size of coffee grounds. And then there were some pieces that were even bigger, and they all acted differently under the same circumstances. So the sound frequency affects different matter differently. Okay. And I'll probably do some more experiments in the future. Like Gandalf was saying, we should do a whole show on this. I'll take my computer in the basement and we could just have some fun. You know what I mean?
Oh, that'd be great, dude. Like years on.
And you should see what drywall dust does, because it's like explodes, man. It builds into these little piles, and then it like a little explosions at the top, like a volcano. Puff, puff, puff. And then
drywall dust is so light, man.
And you can see the fucking dust build itself into a pile, and then it comes out the top, and it falls down, and it gets collected at the bottom. It gets pulled in from the bottom, and then it gets pulled up through the top. And you see this three-dimensional thing happening with the dust. It's fucking amazing.
I'm looking forward to watching it.
It will be interesting to do it with snow.
Ah, yes, that
Snow?
would be interesting.
Snow?
Yeah, snow.
No, I could see that being a real hard. You'd have to. That would be a seriously hard thing to do, because snow melts. You'd have to be in a freezing, controlled climate temperature where the snow didn't stick. Sometimes there's like a powdery snow.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really stick to itself very well because it's extremely frozen, and the patterns of the crystals, they don't lock together. So you'd have to keep those conditions. You couldn't like bring snow inside and try it because it would melt right away. Your table would have to be the right temperature, the same outside. You have to set everything up outside so everything was the same temperature, and you could try it with snow, but you'd have to do it outside. It would be cold.
It would be a challenge. I agree. I'm not saying it can't be done.
Yeah. I agree. It would be a real challenge. Hey, I didn't tell you. I also tried it with smoke. I built a little chamber. I made this little. I used like 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch little wooden sticks, and I made a box, maybe a foot square, and I wrapped it in the same plastic as in the first experiment. It's the kind of plastic you buy at Home Depot to weatherproof your windows, and you can pull it really tight, like drum.
Right.
So I wrapped this little box, and I cut a small hole in the bottom of it, and I lit a couple of cigarettes, and I filled that box with as much smoke, as dense as I could get it inside that box. And then I started putting frequencies to it, and I could see it was very faint, and my camera wasn't picking it up, and it was really, really hard to do. But I was getting smoke to arrange itself in 3-dimensional patterns, which was fucking awesome. But the only problem was it was so hard to see because you had to look through the smoke, and you didn't see the pattern until you looked at just the right angle where you could see these little light spots where the smoke was not collecting. You know what I mean? These little blank, little blank areas. It was really hard to see, but I could see it, and I did make that experiment. It was pretty tough to do, though.
I imagine that an experiment like this, if you had a chamber that was completely sealed off, and say like your table, right, and it was just completely sealed off with glass, you were able to get smoke inside of that glass chamber. oh, what a fascinating like image would appear if you were able to vibrate some kind of frequency under that, man.
No doubt.
So,
Yeah, really.
Aaron, what's the conclusion you got between cymatics and the evolution of the human being?
The conclusion I got, my friend, is abiogenesis.
Okay.
Abiogenesis is what scientists and theologians and debaters are always trying to wonder and philosophize about. How did life begin from nothing? So as I explained before, I showed you the pictures of the DNA under cymatic conditions. The cymatics, because cymatics, the experiments happen on a plate, like a glass table, like I showed you, on a steel plate or a glass or plastic table. So that's 2 dimensions. It's a flat plane. But what you need to understand is, I'm trying to explain that this is happening in 3 dimensions. The patterns, the lines of the little salt lines that are created, those salt particles that form lines, the particles are dancing in 3 dimensions. The lines are twisting in 3
Yeah.
dimensions. It's really hard to see, and you have to get a camera really close and you have to see it in action to see it. But that shit is happening in 3 dimensions. So when certain frequencies are affecting molecules like, say, amino acids and proteins, which are essentially non-organic molecules, that they will form themselves into a self-replicate. Once it's formed, it becomes a self-replicating DNA molecule. So this, in my opinion, is the source of all life on Earth or the universe in general. Cymatics is the reason that we are here, my friend. I've seen cymatic patterns that show a tortoise, the shell of a tortoise, the patterns on the tortoise shell. I've seen cymatic patterns that show zebra stripes and giraffe, their coat patterns. I've seen cymatics that show, just like I showed you, fingerprints and mollusks and coral and spinal cords and fish fish ribs and fish skeletons. This is the source
Nice.
of all life in the universe. It's the reason life exists. It's a part of physics in the universe. It is what abiogenesis comes from. It's the thing that.
So in other words, at the beginning was the word.
Yes, sir. And that's yes, sir. There in the beginning was a word, and the word was God, and the word was with God.
Okay.
Well,
So
see,
the Bible is not so messed up then.
Roof Bro, I know that you don't believe in God and all. Well, I know you don't believe in any of these religions, but can you understand how, like, someone like me would maybe look at this and believe that there was maybe some type of entity that writ this code into the fabric of the universe?
I wanted to Gandalf. I'm sorry. I want to. This is the reason I wanted to talk about that with cymatics, but I mean it's taking too long. I mean I don't know how much
we can keep going. We can go a little longer if you want. What do you got?
Well, because when you were talking about the microcosmos, that is the constellation. I mentioned that the way that the frequency bounce off planets interfere with life here, that give them form using cymatics as an example. But in the Bible, in the Genesis, it describes not only a natural creation, it also describes an artificial creation. That is an intervention, someone that trick with a gene of life here in this world. So, even the Bible says that the world was, the planet was wasted and desolated, and by the word he used to tell Adam to repopulate Earth, that means that the Earth was populated before. So there has been different type of creation at different times, or there was an intervention that someone that play with the genetic code of the life in this Earth.
You know, you said Adam. Adam is the first man. The first life.
Adam is the name for humanity as a
Hang on,
whole.
hang on. Yes, yes. Adam is the name for humanity. Adam is the first man, the first human.
No, not the first human. It's a name used for humanity as a whole. We
But
use
let's-
today the word.
Let's also consider two other aspects of the word Adam.
Okay.
Adam is the Adam of the Bible.
Yes.
Atom is Adam.
Atom. Yeah. Atom.
Is the first building block of all molecules. It's an atom, a single atom.
Oh,
and then
we're gonna have to go now into quantum physics and light and.
Hang on. There's one more aspect.
Mhm.
In the Kemet tradition, in ancient Egypt, there was atom, atum,
and the Jew have Adam. Yes.
And the Egyptians used to say that all is atom.
Yes.
Was it through then the worship of the Aton, which was the sun god? It was like that heretical time in Egyptian history where they worshipped the Aton.
Yes, that's correct.
But we got to go back to the same thing that Tesla says. Everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. And what Walter also said, everything is light. There is two kind of lights: light at peace, at rest, and there is moving light. So particles is another pattern of light. There are no particles. Particles are formed as a vibration itself, then later on complement each other and get together. So in the cosmos, there are no atoms. There's only light. So in here also, in Earth, everything is what we call the atom today is an orb of light.
At a subatomic level, yeah, it definitely is. Nothing exists technically at a subatomic level.
Well, not really, because as everything is fractal, everything is the same at the macro as the micro and the macro. So whatever is a subatomic level, it have to be at the atomic level or reality as we see it. You have to match. It's fractal.
Well, I just want to try to answer Gandalf's question. I don't, you were asking about some entity writing this code into the physics of the universe. In order to phrase that question the way you did, by doing that, you're assigning agency, and that's not something that I agree to. I don't agree that there is a thinking entity that has thoughts, will, and desire, and agency. I think that whatever God is nothing like the God of the Bible, because the God of the Bible is a flat-out freaking psychopath.
Yes.
I mean, just plain and simple. The God of the Bible, the way it's written, if you take it literally.
Yes, I was going to say it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to distinguish.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Take it literally, the God of the Bible is a flat-out fucking psychopath by all definitions. He's genocidal. He's infanticidal. He's a psycho, bloodthirsty, vengeful.
Vain.
Are you describing the God of the Bible, or are you describing men today?
I'm describing the God of the Bible if taken literally.
And men today.
And men
human
today.
beings.
Oh yeah, no different from men back then. They were bloodthirsty and vengeful and jealous and.
Well, the psychopaths were, and still are. Most of us aren't really that much. Except for money, secondary psychopathy.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm done.
How did the sound created two forms of personality, psychopath and good people?
See, now you asked a question that involved the number two. How did it form two personalities? And I assume you mean the feminine and the masculine.
No, I assume behavior.
So you mean
He's
like a psychopath and a non-psychopath?
Yeah.
Well, I would again caution with the number 2 being the duality I would have cautioned against assigning one or the other. I think there's a gray area. I think there's a triality or a triunity or a trinity, which permeates all religion, the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, just like I said with sound, frequency, tone, and vibration, or frequency, tone, and volume. And when you said Tesla said frequency, energy, frequency, and vibration.
You misunderstood. You misunderstood my question, Aaron. I'm not talking about the yin yang, the bad and good. I'm not talking about that. How does frequency that plays over the universe creates different personalities and behaviors from individuals?
Only the creator could tell us that, if the creator could even speak.
I would only suggest that our environment plays a hefty role. But
the environment was created by us. It's a reflection of the people that live today or tomorrow or yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, is there really just psychopaths and non-psychopaths? I mean,
I'm not saying that. There's also all kind of behaviors and personalities. There is as many personalities as are orbs in the solar system.
Yeah, but your question was asking why are there 2 personalities?
No, I say how did the sound that created the individual created the personality of the individual? That is, so those there are, I use as an example, just 2 examples, the psychopath and the non-psychopath, but there are different personalities. So how did sound created personality? Because every single one of us, regardless of who are we born from, we inherit a certain amount of personality, but we have from the DNA and the background of our family, but every individual is different from birth.
Well, I don't think that's a fair question, and only because, look, I'm 40, I'm getting close to 50 years old, and I can only tell you from my personal experience that I have changed my personality over time. It continues to change. So whatever I was born with is not who I am now. Whatever I was at 7 is not what I was at 15. It's not what I was at 20. It's not what I was at 30. So I don't think that our personalities were created in the way that you're asking.
Well, but the question is, are you adding personality or are you shedding the bad personality?
Both. I add and I subtract. I take away what I think I don't like and I add what I think I like.
So it's like kind of free will.
I suppose you could say it's a co-creation.
Yes, it's growing, right?
I co-create.
Okay, from the conscious level.
Yes.
Okay, so that's my question. My question is, how come a sound that a star life create that consciousness, the ability for the individual to change and at the intellectual and conscious level? Because I understand that sound might create rocks. I might understand that sound might create water or inorganic material or unconscious, unaware material. But where does consciousness come from?
That, my friend, could be a whole show by itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. See, I think that us even asking these types of questions, like, kind of futile, because I don't think humans honestly have evolved to the point where they can even begin to grasp these subjects.
Even the best neuroscientists have not figured out where consciousness comes from.
Well, it's reading in the books. Reading in the books, the problem we interpret it wrong. We interpret it from the materialistic point of view.
Well,
now we are rediscovering the material part, the physical creation part.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, but then we have to go back again and read those books again now with this key of knowledge that we find out that those books, they're not talking about people crossing the Red River and none of that. They're talking about this kind of stuff. So wherever we found this information, we got to go back and look again, and then we might find the answers for the conscious part.
Yeah. Sometimes going back to the drawing board is the best answer.
Yes.
Go back to the beginning. Take what you learn and go back and start all over again and reinterpret what you thought you knew.
Yep.
We need to do a cymatic show.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to do some more experiments, and Blue Blood is going to do some experiments. He said he's going to film it. He better fucking film it and put it online. I want to see his experiments.
Blue, we're
Yeah.
waiting on you, buddy.
That's
Well,
right.
And
We
Blue,
will come and tack your thumbs to the wall if you don't.
Blue Blood just said talking about this stuff gets us labeled as New Agers. You know what? Fuck it. I don't care. Label me what you want, man.
The 5G Wi-Fi is doing some cymatics in our brain, though. It's doing at the conscious level.
That's
So
correct. Yes.
if you can reorganize matter using cymatics, then you can reorganize consciousness using cymatics. 5G is an example.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because our thoughts and our emotions and everything that happens inside our brain is the result of electrical impulses, and electrons firing through the neuron pathways, just like electrons in wires, can be manipulated with electromagnetic field. And electromagnetic fields are cymatics in their own right. They can be adjusted to frequencies and volume and modulation, which would be tone. And so absolutely, Laz, you're spot on. And this is why a lot of people are worried about 5G and how it affects the brain and how it affects consciousness and the way we think. And since our brains, we know, are organic machines that run on electricity, that you can have an effect on the electricity in certain ways with certain patterns of electromagnetic frequencies. So absolutely, I 100% agree.
Yeah, but there is a correlation there, because then we have to see what is the electromagnetic or the electricity in the brain creating consciousness or facilitating the production of awareness, or is awareness and consciousness creating the electroshock?
I think it's always a matter of co-creation.
It's a relationship there. So that's why in the spiritual, looking at this holy books that we call holy, looking at that from the spiritual point of view, we see how these two people, the twins, that is the separation of the body and the consciousness, are called the twins, the masculine and the feminine. In this case, the masculine is the spiritual. The feminine is the spiritual consciousness. That is what people call the spirit or the ghost, and the negative masculine is the body. That is, in the Matrix, they explain it that the human body is a battery, and an empty battery for that matter. What gives the body the charge is what we call today a spirit, which is the electricity. So the electricity does not produce, the body does not produce electricity. It's consciousness that give electricity to the body, or transmit electricity to the body, and vivify, like Frankenstein, bring the body alive. A body without consciousness, without a spirit, is an inert, no charge pound of flesh. That's what I got to say about that.
Well, fellas, Gandalf, I'm glad you can make it, at least for a little bit.
Sorry I got in so late. Oh.
No problem, my man.
All right.
That I was able to listen in when I was making dinner, man. It was fascinating on the astrology subject, and wow, I'm glad we got to this cymatics bit. We need a full show about this.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, I think so too.
No doubt.
Sorry, I've been kind of quiet and unenergetic tonight, but
Laz, you've been absolutely brilliant tonight, and I thank you, my friend, for you and I had a little misunderstanding the first time we chatted on the show, and you're a bigger man and I'm a bigger man, and neither one of us allowed it to get out of hand. It didn't turn into drama. and I'm glad to know you. I'm glad you're my friend. I'm glad you came back. You've been absolutely brilliant tonight, and I just can't thank you enough. You're awesome.
Water under the bridge.
You're a good
And
man, brother.
Amy, I had no idea how do you stand this long. I mean, you are a very strong woman.
Well, thank you. I presume you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And
Okay.
wow,
So much.
feeling like you're feeling today. You're standing here and
Well,
participating in
actually,
this.
I'm lying down in bed, but
Oh,
you
okay.
know, I'm not quite lying down. I'm sitting up a bit, propped up on the back.
Well,
But,
I hope you get better fast.
oh, I imagine I will. I have every
I think
intention to do so, and I appreciate your well wishes.
No spicy food, eh?
Actually, the spices, the doctor said that's not the problem. It was the fats. So I have to be very careful with how much fat I intake at any given point in time. But beyond that, it seems like I can eat. It wasn't the cayenne after all.
Wow, let's do the exact opposite of the keto diet.
What's the keto diet?
That's the diet that you're supposed to consume primarily fat.
I don't want to consume primarily fat. That is not an option. I had a little piece of gluten-free brownie.
Well,
But
make
it
sure
was
you
high
get the
in
right.
fat. I could tell it was my system didn't like.
Well, make sure you get the right kind. I'm sorry, you're breaking up, and I don't want to.
Yeah, the right kind of.
Avocados.
Yeah, the right kind of oils.
Omega-3 avocados. You get the right kind of fat.
Oh, I eat avocados like daily. Half an avocado every day. I'd eat a whole one if I could afford it.
All right, guys.
I love avocado.
All right, everybody. Final thoughts.
Well,
I'm looking forward to a cymatic show.
my final thought is just thank you everybody for your well wishes and concern about my state of being. Everyone who has expressed such, and even those who thought it and didn't express it, I appreciate it ever so much. Love always.
I was going to type this out, but I want to answer Blue Blood real quick. He was asking if I think he should try 440 or 432. I'm going to tell you right now, Blue, there's a science behind the 432 hertz that's very real. I will drop you a link on your channel under one of your videos. It's a link to an Amplex video that's all about the 432. 432 is a division of the speed of light. 432 is part of the cymatic matrix that we live in. 432 is the perfect harmonic frequency. It's far superior to 440, and you can see it in the cymatics. But if you're doing cymatic experiments, I would suggest that you try all frequencies, all tones, and all volumes. And if you're trying cymatic experiments, pay close attention when you strike a note. Watch the particles. If they start to dance, turn the volume up. Before you start changing the tone or changing the frequency, just simply turn the volume up. If the particles start to dance, turn the volume up and see what happens. And if nothing really special happens, turn the volume back down a little bit and then start changing the frequency. And then every now and then you can try different tones. But just pick one frequency, and it doesn't matter, or excuse me, just pick one tone. It doesn't matter if you're using a guitar or a flute or a frequency generator that puts out a single tone, and then just play with frequencies. And when you tinker with frequency and you see the particles start to dance, then just stop right there and turn the volume up and see what happens. Okay. But as for the 432 Blue, I would suggest to you right now that you tune all your guitars to 432 and keep it that way. Period. End of story. Don't play in 440. Just stop. And after you watch this video, then I'll drop you a link. I might do it tonight or tomorrow or in the next day or so, but keep your eye out. I'll drop you a link. After you see this fucking documentary, this little video, you will never go back to 440, I promise. The 432 ties into it's part of the Fibonacci. It relates directly. It's a division of the speed of light. It ties directly into the relation between the distance of the sun, the moon, the earth. I can't say enough about it. So 432 all the way, bro.
And I was going to just add one thing. If anyone's interested in this subject, look into the cymatics documentary. Arthur C. Clarke does a presentation in that documentary where he gets into the Fibonacci sequence and everything. Check that out if you're at all interested in this.
I will. I didn't know that Arthur C. Clarke had done that, but I'll definitely look into that.
Oh, it's fascinating. He gets into the repeating patterns. He gets into everything in that documentary.
432 is no joke. 432 is no fucking joke. Get away from 440. And when you go and jam with your buddies, make sure they tune to you.
Yes.
And you can download apps on your phone, like little tuner apps, that you can adjust the frequency so that you can tune your guitar exactly to 432 instead of the standard 440. So
on the 440. Yeah, 44 deaths in Gematria.
Well, you guys know my final thought, right? It's always the same. Come on, somebody. Pick up your fucking trash.
This year.
Oh.
My final thoughts are always the same. Pick up your fucking trash, people.
Oh, that's right. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm tired. I'm ready to hit the sack like Ray.
Order of Chaos is with you, Gandalf. We're gonna do a cymatics. We're gonna do a show on cymatics.
I'm stoked, man.
Yes.
Okay, you guys.
Much love.
All right, you guys. We are at 10:30. Laz, thank you, my brother. You're a good friend, and you are super insightful, and I'm so glad to know you.
Thank you.
Absolutely,
Thank you,
Laz.
guys.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody in the chat. Anybody have any questions, they can drop a comment over there in my chat.
All right, you guys. I'm shutting it down. We don't have an outro. I'm just going to kill it, and we do love you all, and as soon as I get my computer to cooperate, there we go.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thanks. And Laz, hang around for a second. We'll chat on the after show, on the hangout afterwards, after the broadcast. So I'm killing the broadcast. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.